My name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to the Whateverthon TBR. I have not done a readathon TBR in a hot minute. In fact, the last one I did, I believe, was for the reindeer readathon in late November. I did consider pulling out the elf ears for this one again, but I decided to stick to the summery themes, even though I don't exactly look very summery right now either. But anyway, the Whateverthon, or Whatever-You-Want-A-Thon, is a readathon running in June, and it is specifically made so that you can just read whatever you want. It's, it says that on the tin. There is a bingo board with prompts that you can follow, but you do not have to follow them to participate in the readathon. I am going to follow all of them because if you give me prompts in a bingo board and tell me that those prompts in bingo board come with extra points for your team, of course I am going to follow that. I have joined the Shelf Slayers, and not just because their color is purple. Okay, like that was part of it, but also because of the prompts. I liked those prompts the best overall. There was a different team that had read an indie book as a prompt, and so I was tempted, but no, I read indie books all the time anyway. We'll stick with this one. There's a whole bunch more to this and a lot of info, but Maddie, the creator, already has a long video going into length to all of that, so I will have that down in the description below. And also, I'm pretty sure the majority of people watching this are going to be others participating in the readathon, so you probably don't need all that info anyway. So let's talk about my personal goal and how I kind of picked wrong. So, of course, you can pick whatever number of books you would like for the readathon. And the whole point is that you're supposed to pick something that is going to be a challenge to you, and that could be whatever number. Now, I do believe that anyone that set their challenge as 0 books is not going to be counted in the final point tally, because that's gaming the system, because every book you read past your goal is extra points. But I undersold myself because I signed up very quickly when registration first came out in early May when I was just coming off a reading slump. So I went with 10 books. 10 books is my average that I read in a month, and considering that I was struggling to get to that over the month of April, I thought, hey, let's take it easy and do my standard rather than going above and beyond, even though I will be on summer break at the time of this readathon. But I am sitting here in late May with like 4 days left of the school year, and I am already on my 12th book of the month, and there are still several days left of the month. So I did consider changing my goal, but because I'd already registered, you'd have to contact one of the admin to get it changed. It's a whole thing. So instead, rather than bothering anyone, I decided to make this a challenge for myself in other ways. Meaning that I am going to be prioritizing books that are maybe a little bit harder in content, aka darker, that may take a little bit more thinking, not like all light-hearted romance stuff, although there will probably still be some of that. And also to put a lot more emphasis on my longer books. I got a lot of chonkers that are still on my review list, and I really need to get to them. So let's jump right in. First, the books that I have on my definite TBR, and then my quote-unquote alternates list, because your girl is a mood reader, and setting an entire concrete TBR is really just setting myself up for failure. First up on my list is Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. This is interesting in that it actually directly name drops COVID-19, specifically the financial effects, because our protagonist is down on his luck and working as a food delivery driver in the economic downturn caused by the pandemic, and gets an offer to help with this animal rights organization, which he discovers is in a parallel universe and is actually for kaiju, aka the giant creatures that can sometimes wreck cities. I loved this concept. I loved the concept of showing a bit more compassion towards kaiju creatures. I mean, yeah, they destroy cities, but they're also just creatures that are probably pissed off that the earth they used to roam is now covered in cities. And all I know is that the kaiju are in danger for some reason, and I'm assuming intrigue. I picked this one because it fits multiple prompts, and I'm not going to go into exactly what prompts, but a friend, when I was in the middle of that April reading slump, had recommended this as a slump breaker, and I didn't end up picking it until the readathon, but then when I was talking to someone else on my team who had talked about it, and I talked about that being something that was recommended to me, they agreed that yes, this is actually a pretty good reading slump breaker. So this will probably be one of my more lighthearted books, but fingers crossed it comes in from the library in time. I am checking that account every day because I don't want to be eliminated by when things come in. Next up is one of the darker books, and that is The Old Love and the New by Alistair Karadec. This is a queer dystopian, part of my The Gay Nerds Are Not Okay list series that I've been joking about, all about a disease that has swept through, and all women were removed to these quarantine zones, and our protagonist has been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and so he doesn't really care about the state of the world because he's got his own stuff going on. However, his best friend brings home a woman from one of these quarantine zones, and they begin to unravel all the horrors that have been happening within them. And I feel like this book is probably going to call me out because it has a lot to do with the how much do our own personal problems absolve us from not paying attention to greater world problems. The idea of, can you really say, well, I've got stuff going on, so I can't pay attention to this in the real world? And I kind of went through it in 2021 and checked out of most world news, so I feel like this will be coming at me, but I'm not sure. And also, I was just glancing through the Goodreads page very recently, and I noticed a review that called it beautifully tragic. So, little nervous, might have to plan this accordingly with like maybe a really nice happy book right after, or like read a happy book half and half every day as I read this one. I'm not sure yet, but I am expecting both a call out and it to be sad, and I have to do a review for it, so this could get interesting. Up next is The Devil You Know by Kit Rocha. This is the sequel in the Mercenary Librarian series. I did do a full review of the first book because I won it from Bookish First, but this one I bought myself, so this one I won't do a review video for. But this is another romance in that series, and I am intrigued to see how it ends because it is a dystopian between two groups of disaster bisexuals, our mercenary librarians and these ex-protectorate soldiers, and they're trying to, defeat the evil dystopian bad guys and all of that. But in this book, one of the characters is actively dying as a result of all of the bioengineering they did to him when he was in the protectorate, and basically he's falling in love with this woman and has just decided to keep her safe as like his final act on Earth. And I'm pretty sure he's probably gonna survive, but I don't know. Maybe the author will pull a twist. Can't be sure. This is the book I actually bought as part of my trying to break the reading slump purchases in April to try and get back on track, but I didn't end up reading it. However, I am hoping that it will do the job for this next readathon because I did love the first one, and I'm only slightly salty I could only get an arc of that one. Up next is Infected Moonlight by Erin Kelly. I can't really talk about what this book is about because it's the third in the series, and the second ended on a gigantic cliffhanger, so I can't really talk about even the premise of it without giving it away. But rest assured, we have werewolves, we have some urban fantasy, we do have some low-key queer vibes, although it's mostly side characters. But the author did tell me that as the series goes on, those queer side characters get a bigger role. So I'm excited. But this one is also one of my quote-unquote harder books because I am going to be consuming it in audiobook form. I did not exactly do that for the second book because I had to be in a very specific headspace for audiobooks, and so I dropped out part of the way through and just finished it by reading. But then I found out later that the actual narrator, whose voice I love, did a really awesome British accent towards the latter half of that book, and I'm like, I should have listened all the way through. So we are doing what I did for the first book in this series to read this, and that is I have a giant get the entire house in order cleaning weekend set up for the first weekend of summer break. We're talking like your standard cleaning plus your like organizing the Tupperware and cleaning out the fridge levels of deep cleaning the house. And I figure that should be enough to get the entire book listened to while I'm doing all of that. In general, I can't listen to audiobooks that fast, and I also can't focus for that long without something else for my body to do. So I'm hoping that makes it work, and I'm also hoping to do a vlog that I will also tag under Whateverthon, just because I like showing off how I have cleaned my house. It's a very adult thing, but I don't care. I love it. So if you're interested, be on the lookout for that vlog. Up next is I Married a Naga by Regine Abel. This is the sequel in the Prime Mating Directive series, all about, well, monster romances. And in this case, it is a Naga. If you don't know what a Naga is, it's basically like a half snake person. But regardless, I loved the first one. This one appears to be a somewhat similar premise. Woman goes to an alien planet to participate in their great hunt. A thing happens. The synopsis is very vague on that, and she has to enter into a 6-month temporary marriage for reasons, but the Naga dude is like really into it, so he's going to try and court her to get her to stay forever. That's all I know. I don't really understand the premise, but I loved the first book, and the rest of this series of I Married a insert mythical creature here, moving forward, looks really cool and has really high ratings, so I'm hoping that this will go really well, and knowing me, I'll probably read this in a day. Up next is The Iron Widow by Jiren J. Zhao. This is a sci-fi retelling of the rise of the Empress Wu Zetian. I've heard a lot about this. I have seen the author photo in their cow onesie a lot, so obviously that alone would be enough to get me interested. But also, this is kind of spreading as a giant buddy read as part of the readathon. Someone suggested it, and like so many people were like, I have that book! And so there's a giant group of us all reading this as part of a buddy read. It has its own Discord server now just for this buddy read. So I'm really excited to have a lot of other people to talk about, because, you know, I don't usually read a lot of the books everyone else is talking about. So I'm looking forward to it. I've heard it spoken about as part of queer literature, and that one I don't know a lot about, but it definitely has dismantling the patriarchy vibes, and I'm here for that, so I am really excited for this one. Up next is Raven by Adele Klee. This is a second chance Regency romance, the second in its series, and it is basically, you know, they were once lovers and now they're not, and he was married but then his wife died, and now she's in danger and needs his help because of course he's part of this like protectorate gentleman's club. Pretty standard Regency romance stuff, if I'm being honest. However, I love this author. Her Regency romances always read so quickly to me. She definitely specializes in like 4-book series where all the dudes are friends, but like I love the bromance angle of all of these series where like characters from books before and after this book in the series will like pop in to help them out, and so it really builds this sense of a found family throughout all of it. And in general, I just love Regency romances. This is probably another one I could read in a day, but in general, it's just great to have those extra books that will definitely help with possible slumps throughout a readathon. So that was my concrete TBR that covers most of the prompts on the bingo board. Not all of them. The ones like to read a book that was picked by a poll, or to read a book that begins with the last letter of your previous title, that kind of stuff that I really can't pick ahead of time without setting myself up for failure. I don't have those covered yet, but I do have a list of alternates, and this is where a lot of my focusing on the longer books is going to come into play. Like, for example, if I find myself having having hit 10 books really early on in the month, then I'm going to focus purely on the longer books or the darker books to kind of challenge myself so that I'm not just racking up 16, 17 books just because I'm reading lighthearted stuff. Although if I do read a lot of the longer books, maybe I'll go back to the lighthearted stuff. I don't know. Regardless, first up we have Faded by Leela Mina. This is one of my review books that I've had on there for so long because it is over 600 pages, and the polycule that I have fallen so much in love with is in dire straits, and I don't know that I'm prepared for all that angst. Then we have The Nexus Games by Shami Stovall, yet another new Shami Stovall series. I have been reviewing her for literal years, and this is the third series of hers that I'm going to be reviewing. It is a chonker. She didn't even ease me in with this one, and knowing Shami Stovall, as I do from reading and reviewing so many of her works, this one will probably have a gigantic ending that will gut me. And, gotta be prepared for that one, but I am excited for it. I also have on my list Deceived by the Gargoyles by Lillian Clark. This is the sequel in its Monster Matches series. Yes, more arranged marriage type monster erotica, because that's just what I am all about recently. This is about a woman who gets matched with a gargoyle in this urban fantasy. I actually believe our female main character is a witch, and she discovers that said gargoyle also has other mates already. So it is a polyromance. Yay! I really, really loved the first in this series, and everything I can see about Lillian Clark from researching her style on Goodreads, everyone seems really positive. I love how well she does trigger warnings for all of her books. Awesome. And in general, I just really want to continue this series regardless, so I really hope this is one I can get to. The next two I have are books that are purely on here because, one, I already own them, and so I was already somewhat interested in them, and then two, I have seen these books on other people's TBRs as part of the readathon, and once again, I am not usually the one that reads the books other people are talking about, but it's fun to do that, so we're gonna try. Now, we have Gear Breakers by Zoe Hanamakuta. This is another sapphic, although I don't believe that Iron Widow was sapphic, but this one is definitely sapphic, Asian-inspired sci-fi, all about tearing down the patriarchy. So who knows, maybe I'll do a 1-2 punch of this right after the Iron Widow, just for that extra good queer Asian tearing down the patriarchy vibes. And also, it's really nice because this one has a book plate in it with the author's signature, and I was really excited to see that at Half Price Books. And then we have The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake, one of those indie books that was so highly lauded that it got picked up by a major publisher. And I don't know much about this book other than there's 6 characters and bisexual rep and magic-y stuff. Probably should have researched more before purchasing it. But these last two on my alternates lists are books that I will 100% read if they get to me in time. So the first one is The Ghosts of Marshley Park by Amanda Ines. I forgot to send the email asking for a phonetic pronunciation of the name before I started filming. So if I said that incorrectly, editing Margaret will put something in here. I was wrong. The name is in fact pronounced Innes. Regardless, this is a YA ghost story all about a young girl who is murdered and then teams up with another ghost from the Victorian era already haunting the house to solve her own murder. I have been told that the author meant for it to be a more friendship-based story, but there might also be some low-key romantic elements, so I'm intrigued by that. However, I still have to wait for the review copy to get to me before I can start that. I'm pretty sure it'll be here by mid-month, hopefully, but I've had review copies get majorly waylaid in the shipping process, so it's possible that it won't even come until July. She did let me know that the package is on its way, so hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be here by the beginning of the month. And the other book is The Company of Fiends by Catherine Moon. I pre-ordered this basically right after I read A Lady of Rooksgrove Manor. It's not a direct sequel, but it does take place in the same universe, and it is another polycule monster erotica story. I absolutely adored A Lady of Rooksgrove Manor. Catherine Moon in general does polycules really well, so I'm really excited for this. However, it was originally supposed to come out in May, and then it got pushed back to the end of June, like the last week, and now I'm paranoid that it's going to get pushed back again. So if it comes in on time, it doesn't get pushed back, 100% will be reading it. I read the first book in a day, and that was nearly 400 pages, but no guarantees. And that is my list so far. I am both hyped and anxious for this readathon to begin, mostly because I really want to continue to stick with my TBR challenge, the challenge where I do not get a new book until I have already read 2 books that I already own. However, I have a lot of new books that I want to get for this series, so I have to make sure that I can read the books I already own as part of it, and it's a whole thing. And then on top of that, technically 2022, as I have said so much on my channel, was supposed to be my year of rest and not taking it too hard. And I'm low-key nervous that I'm gonna go too hard because points and numbers and teams. I was on a winning team for Whateverthon before, the middle grade Monarchs. It was great. And I was also on the winning team for the Reindeer Readathon because I have a competitive streak. So I gotta make sure that I use this readathon to structure my time, because with my brain, the unstructured time of having long periods off work is actually not great for me. If I'm not careful, I can get into a really weird hazy space. So I'm hoping having a readathon will kind of keep all that in perspective. But if I go too far, I could go teetering right back into a reading slump again. And also, I really got to make sure I read those review books because I am so close to having to close again. And I don't want that, considering the fact that I just opened after 6 months being closed at the beginning of this year. So here's hoping this works out for me. Now, if you are participating in this readathon, obviously I would love to know about it. We probably have already talked on the Discord server. I don't know. But what are you most excited for? What prompts are you really hyped for? Are you waiting desperately for that one book to come in on time like I am? I really need my library to come through for me right now. But in general, I loved this readathon before. I am slowly mending my relationship with readathons. It's been a rocky trail, but I cannot wait for June to begin. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.